Um, anyway, today we'll be discussing Paradise Lost, Book 1. Paradise Lost is an epic poem by John Milton, and Milton is a 17th century English poet. This poem was published in 1667. It's a long poem. As you know, it's an epic poem, so it should be very lengthy. And Paradise Lost is a very lengthy poem, and it consists of 10 books, and it has 10,000 lines of verse. So you can understand that it is a very big poem written by Milton, and this poem is considered to be Milton's masterpiece, that is his greatest work of art. And it is also considered to be one of the greatest works of art in the world of literature. This poem, Paradise Lost, is based on the biblical story of the fall of man. The fall of man. You must be very much familiar with the story of the fall of man as narrated in the book, in the Bible, particularly in the book of Genesis. In the book of Genesis, that is the first book of the Old Testament. You know, the Bible has two books, the Old Testament and the New Testament, and this story uh, occurs in the Old Testament. In the very beginning of this book, the name of the chapter is Book of Genesis. Particularly in the first 11 chapters of the book of Genesis. So, the first 11 chapters of the book of Genesis narrates what? It narrates the primeval history. Primeval history. What is that? Primeval history is the story of the creation of the world. Okay, it tells the story of the creation of the world. You can understand by the very name of the chapter Genesis, because Genesis means beginning. So it narrates the story of how the world was created. So it's a completely biblical representation of the creation of the world. And it also recounts the early history of man. Okay, the early history of man. It also tells the story of Adam and Eve. You are very much familiar with these two names, Adam and Eve. Who are Adam and Eve? According to Christian faith, they are the first man and woman, that is the first parents of mankind. Okay, so Adam and Eve, they are, according to Christian faith, they are the first parents of mankind. So according to this narrative, God creates Adam and Eve and places them in the Garden of Eden. So God creates Adam and Eve. First, he creates Adam, and then he creates Eve, uh, and he places them in the Garden of Eden. What is the Garden of Eden? The Garden of Eden is paradise. It is also called paradise, or the Garden of God. So it's a garden made by God in a particular location in heaven, and it is called paradise. So God made the Garden of Eden for Adam and Eve so that they can live happily there. So Adam and Eve, They were the first two human beings created by God, and God created them only for His pleasure. He created them own image, out of His own image, so that they look like Him. So, human being is created out of the image of God, and they are placed in the Garden of Eden. Uh, and as we know, this Garden of Eden is a place which is full of fruits, comforts, and joy. So there is nothing shortage there. So it is full of comfort and joy. This garden is said to have every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food. And there are also two trees which are specifically mentioned in that book. Uh, which are these trees? The tree of life. One is the tree of life, which is placed in the center of the garden, and another tree is the tree of knowledge. It is also called the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So these are the two trees which are mentioned in the book of Genesis. However, there are much debates about these two trees, whether they are two different trees or they are the same tree. There is a lot of controversy about this, as we know that the Bible has many versions which contradict one another in many respects. Anyway, God creates Adam and Eve, and He places them in the Garden of Eden, which is full of abundance. And God tells them that they can enjoy anything the garden offers them and live and play forever with joy and delight. However, there is only one prohibition, that they cannot eat fruit from the tree of knowledge. Okay, so there is only one prohibition, that they cannot eat fruit from the tree of knowledge. Why? Because if they eat the fruit from the tree of knowledge, they will develop the knowledge of good and evil. That means they will acquire knowledge. So, knowledge is something which is uh, acquired by God. Okay, knowledge is something which is completely monopolized by God. So, human being cannot have knowledge. So, this was the rule of God, and that is why they were forbidden to eat the fruit of knowledge. And as Adam and Eve were obedient to God, they did not eat the fruit of knowledge, and they lived happily there, uh, enjoying all the comforts available in the Garden of Eden. So it was a life full of peace, full of bliss. Now, here is another character who is referred to as the serpent. Serpent, Serpent, serpent. Who is this serpent? There are uh, many versions of stories uh, which are narrated in different versions of the Bible and many other myths available. Uh, so it is rather confusing to know who is the actual serpent. Anyway, we can say that this serpent is also known as the Satan. The Satan, this character is also is a very important character in the Paradise Lost. So this serpent is can be also associated with the character the Satan. Who is this Satan? This Satan is a devil. He is also called the devil, and he is also popularly known as Lucifer. Lucifer, Lucifer. That is a very popular name, Lucifer. Uh, we know that Lucifer was an archangel of God. He was very close to God. He was a great uh, devotee of God, and God loved him very much. However, um, gradually he uh, completely went against God. That's a different story. So this Lucifer, what does Lucifer actually do? Lucifer's role is to seduce mankind. Okay, he seduces mankind into sin. So this is his only objective of life, is to seduce mankind into sin, to tempt them into doing some sinful act. Why does he do that? He does it out of jealousy, because once he was very much close to God. But as he rebelled against God, he was thrown out of the heaven by God as a punishment, and he is thrown into the hell. And that is why he is envious of uh, Adam and Eve, because now Adam and Eve, they are well loved by God, and that creates his jealousy. And that is why he is now trying to tempt Eve and Adam and Eve into doing some sinful act, so that God becomes enraged, and God also throw them out of the heaven likewise. So this is uh, Lucifer's or the serpent's plan. Okay, so this serpent, he's in this poem, he is portrayed as a deceptive creature, as a deceptive creature. He can take various disguise. So he's a deceptive creature. So this serpent uh, tempts Eve. He tempts Eve, not Adam. He tempts Eve to eat fruit from the forbidden tree. Okay. So by various means, he tries to convince Eve into thinking that God is actually uh, God is actually making them full by forbidding them not to eat the fruit of knowledge, because if they eat the fruit of knowledge, they will become as powerful as God, as knowledgeable as God. So in this way, he uh, tries to convince Eve into thinking that God is actually trying to befool them. So they should eat the fruit of knowledge and uh, acquire uh, power like God. So the serpent tempts Eve to eat fruit from the forbidden tree, and he shares this fruit with Adam, and immediately they became ashamed of their nakedness. Okay, so Adam and Eve, when they used to live in the paradise, they lived like the primitive men. Uh, they did not wear clothes because they were not aware of their nakedness. They lived in a life full of innocence. So it is called the very phase of mankind when they were completely innocent. And that is why they were not very much aware of uh, these things like the sense of good and evil, uh, the sense of shame, the sense of body. So these things were not very much, uh, they these things did not disturb their mind, because they were so innocent. So a kind of blissful life they used to live. But once they eat the fruit of knowledge, they immediately got aware of their nakedness, and they covered their genitals with the leaves of fig. Fig. Fig is a fruit which is called dumur. So the leaves of figs are used by Adam and Eve to make a covering by weaving. So by weaving the leaves of the fig leaves, they they made a covering to cover their genitals. So this was the first time that they became aware of their nakedness. So this indicates that they acquired knowledge. Anyway, one cannot understand how it can be connected with uh, becoming conscious of one's nakedness and acquiring knowledge. How these two things can be connected, this is rather absurd anyway, but it is narrated in the poem in this way. So immediately as a result, consequently, God became highly enraged as they disobeyed the instruction of God. So God became highly enraged, and he banishes Adam and Eve, expels them from the Garden of Eden. Okay, so they were also thrown out of heaven, but they are not placed in the hell as God placed Lucifer or Satan in the hell as a punishment, but God placed Adam and Eve uh, in the earth, in the world. So this earth was created uh, for human beings as they are thrown out of heaven. So they are placed upon the earth. So as we are living upon the earth, uh, it is because we are uh, suffering the punishment that is given by God, that we are no longer able to enjoy the blissful life of heaven or the paradise, as our forefathers uh, did something sinful, and that is why they disobeyed God, and that is why they got punished and thrown out of heaven, and now they have to uh, lead a life of pain. So to live on earth, any human being has to suffer pain, because without the feeling of pain, without the experience of pain, we cannot have anything. Even to satisfy our hunger, we have to put much labor, we have to do much work, physical labor. So this is our punishment, that we cannot enjoy anything um, uh, without our without putting much labor. So we have to do work, we have to put much labor, we have to suffer pain, we have to go through various painful experiences of life uh, to satisfy our hunger. So this is the life of earth which is given to mankind, and Eve is given a more stricter punishment, that he was given the burden of bearing child So the burden of pain of giving birth to children, that was given to Eve as a punishment. Anyway, um, I cannot understand how uh, becoming a mother or giving birth to children could be a punishment, but it is described in this poem in that way, or in mythology, or in biblical stories. It is described as a punishment, and that is why we consider womankind as inferior, because they are given much harsher punishment than men, that they have to bear children. But it is highly absurd, illogical kind of representation, uh, because it cannot be a kind of a punishment. One can also consider it as a blessing. Anyway, so um, you see that they are given such kind of punishment. uh, so in order to get what they need, they have to do lot of work, they have to suffer pain, and Eve has to suffer pain while giving birth to children. And the paradise, the gate of paradise, uh, mm, was being stood guard uh, by creatures who are called cherubim, Cherubim. So they stood guard at the entrance of the paradise so that human being cannot enter this garden. Okay. And all this is conspired by the serpent. The serpent, as we see, the serpent, who is called the Lucifer, the Satan, the devil, in many other names. He is also called the Son of God, as they are fallen angels. Lucifer, Lucifer is a fallen angel. He is called a fallen angel. Why? Because he was thrown out of the heaven by God. That is why he is called a fallen angel. And that is why he is also called Son of God, sons of God. So all the angels who are thrown out of heaven are called sons of God. So this very act of disobeying uh, the prohibition of God is called the first sin of mankind. The first sin. This was the first sin that mankind did, uh, and it is called the original sin. Okay, this is called original sin. What is original sin? The sin of disobedience, the sin of disobeying God. That is the sin of eating the fruit of knowledge. So this is our original sin, that we acquired knowledge, and that we acquired knowledge, we have to suffer pain. This fruit of knowledge is described various ways. In Western Europe, it is generally depicted as an apple. You know, so fruit of knowledge, or the forbidden fruit, is generally uh, considered as an apple, or an apple tree. The tree of knowledge, an apple tree, is considered as an apple tree. Uh, However, in other culture, this fruit is either considered as a pomegranate, or something else. Anyway, so this fruit of knowledge, that was the uh, cause of their uh, cause of their fall from heaven. So This was the disobedience. This was the first original sin. So, as uh, with the original sin, mankind is thrown out of paradise and placed on earth, which is the place of suffering. Um, they have to do lots of work, suffer pain throughout their life. And another punishment is that while they were in heaven, they were immortal, but now they are mortal, that they will also have to suffer the pain of disease and death. So these things they will have to suffer. So they are no longer immortal. They are now mortal men. So they are always under the fear of death. Okay, so this is another punishment given to mankind. But there is a suggestion that through these pains, through this suffering, if mankind can prove themselves as honest, if they can keep their faith in God, if they can uh, follow the path of honesty, even after going through various phases of suffering, uh, they can get the chance of returning back to heaven. So, this is the only positive sign of mankind that uh, uh, they may suffer a lot in their earthly life. They may go through various kinds of negative experiences in life. They may have to face different kinds of odds, but still they have a chance. They have a chance to uh, regain their happiness, that blissful life in heaven after death. So this earthly life is a kind of a test. It's a kind of an examination. It's a kind of an ordeal. So if you can uh, pass this exam with flying colors, then you will be again well accepted in the heavenly life. Otherwise, you will thrown out to uh, the hell. Okay, so this is the suggestion. This is the moral of the story. And what does Milton want to suggest? Want to uh, proclaim through his poem is that he says a very significant theme by a very famous line, that the purpose of the book is to justify the ways of God to men. Justify the ways of God to men, that what should men do and what they should not. Okay, so what mankind should do and what they should not, that they should follow, they should understand the will of God, the will of God. So, what God actually wants from mankind, they must understand it and they must follow it. So, they should never go away from the path of God. So, if they can follow this path throughout their life, uh, even after facing all sorts of pain, they can again be rewarded with the joys of heaven. Okay, so this is the suggestion of the story of the Bible, or the story as narrated in Milton's Paradise Lost, or all other myths associated with this biblical story. Oh, there is one question from Priyanka. So Eve was also given the curse by God that every girl will have to bear the pain of childbirth. Yes, God has given Eve this kind of punishment that every woman like her has to suffer the pain of childbirth. Okay, uh, this story is actually it actually represents a highly patriarchal uh, principle. That uh, in our society, in every culture, women are considered as inferior creature than man. So, just to prove that women are inferior, that they are not as worthy as men, uh, such kind of stories, whether biblical stories or mythological stories, as these are all written by men, uh, they uh, represented these stories in this way that women are always conceived as a section of mankind who are inferior, who are not so worthy, and what is worse, that they are sinful, that womankind are actually sinful. They are very prone to do mistakes. They are very prone to do uh, uh, offense, crime. Okay, so if man does any crime, there must be some kind of influence of a woman behind that. Okay, so this is the way the patriarchal world teaches us, and this story also teaches us the same thing, that even God has punished woman. In this story, we see that Eve is also presented very negatively, because Adam did not eat the fruit of knowledge by himself. He was actually made to eat the fruit of knowledge by Eve. So, under the influence of Eve, he did that crime. So, he did not disobey God by himself. It was actually under the influence of Eve he did that. So man cannot do a crime. Man cannot do anything wrong. So there must be some influence of a woman, because it is only women uh, who are the mischief mongers, who do crimes, or who are witches. Okay, so this is the way all literature, myths, or religious uh, stories uh, represent the patriarchal notion. Okay, uh, so as I said in my lecture, that you must have noticed that uh, I said that childbirth, or becoming a mother, or giving birth to a child cannot be a punishment. How can it be a punishment? So it can be considered as a blessing. So one can also interpret in this way that uh, as women are given the opportunity or the power of giving birth to children, so they are superior than men. You can also interpret it in that way. Okay, so the most important thing is how you are interpreting something. Okay, so this is the most important thing. Um, Anyway, and I think I have answered your question satisfactorily, Priyanka.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, thank you. And another thing that you should You should know that this poem is composed in blank verse. Blank verse. The poem, the poem entirely, the poem is entirely composed in blank verse. So, what is blank verse? Uh, Blank verse is a kind of a verse, a kind of a metrical pattern which is written in iambic pentameter. However, the lines of the poem are unrhymed. So it's an unrhymed poem. So there is no rhyme in this poem. However, iambic pentameter, this particular metrical form, is maintained throughout the poem. So this poem is written in blank verse, a very common verse in which is used in English literature. So it is written in iambic pentameter, but the lines are unrhymed. Okay. Uh, so I think I should end here today. So this is my short introduction to the poem that we'll be reading tomorrow, the next day. So from the next day, we'll start reading the text. So I think you should be ready with your text, and you can also start reading the text. So this is all for today. And if you have any questions regarding what I have uh, just discussed with you, so you can share your any kind of questions or anything that you want to share with me.